Welcome everybody, Joel Silverman, Silverman Law Office, here today with the Montana Business Vlog, connecting business people across Montana. Today we've got Kevin Schwartz with us today from Windermere Realty. Kevin, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you today.
Excited.
Kevin, why don't you get us started with telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Well, Kevin Schwartz, currently living in Bozeman, Montana for the past 3 years. Opened a business here a little over 3 years ago now, and have kind of moved all over the country and had different business ventures along the way, and so just kind of settled in here in Bozeman and enjoying Montana.
You and your wife are high school sweethearts.
Yeah.
You met in Oregon, as I understand,
Mm-hmm.
and you started out as a young entrepreneur. Your first business venture was at 19 years old. Why don't you tell us about that?
It was a kind of a fun undertaking. It was a local restaurant in the Chicago area, had a need for valet parking, and I had a family connection with the owner, and they had approached me and just kind of asked if I'd be interested in getting that started, and it sounded like something that would be fun and potentially lucrative. So I took the steps with the city and with the restaurant, and kind of got my valet parking board made up and all my valet tickets and the key hangers and everything, and just went for it. And it was fun. Had hired some of my best friends to run it with me, and some of them drove stick and some of them didn't, so we'd have to ask if it was a stick shift when they pulled up, and so it was operationally, it probably wasn't the best business in the world, but we did okay. It was a good learning experience.
And how long did you do that for?
I think it was probably a year and a half, something like that. So.
And what made you get out of that business?
I was in college at the time, and just I think moved on to the next phase of school, and just didn't have time for it anymore. But.
Did you sell it or just let it die?
I don't think it was probably something that would have warranted a sale at the time, but we just kind of let it go, and I think somebody else probably picked up where we left off.
You bet. Okay, so had you met your wife yet at age 19?
I had, yeah. My wife and I met in high school. I think I was 17, and by the time we were in Chicago doing that, we were engaged. So we got married halfway through college, so we're living proof that that can still work in today's day and age.
What did your fiance, soon-to-be wife, think of you starting this valet business?
I don't think at the time it was something, like we were young, still living with our parents, so we didn't have that need for financial independence, so it wasn't like a make it or break it situation for us at the time, like some of my later business ventures were, but it was just kind of something to help pay for college. After college, I was really heavily focused on a long-term career in the sports industry, hockey in particular. I played hockey growing up and through college, and wanted to have a career in the industry, and to some degree was able to do that, but kind of bounced around in different jobs, different capacities in the hockey world, and learned a lot about front office stuff, hockey operations, coaching, kind of did all that, and at still a pretty young age, the next venture was kind of my ultimate goal and dream was to own a hockey team. So started looking at ways that might be possible for somebody like me, somebody who was young and didn't really have a lot of money, but had a lot of drive and knew what I wanted out of life, and so started looking at ways that might be possible, and discovered that there was a league based on the West Coast that was in need of some expansion, and particularly in Oregon, a place that I had gone to high school. So I was familiar with the state, I was familiar with the league, and that's where it kind of started. So.
And where did it develop into?
It through a lot of research, development, phone calls, it developed into an expansion team, and us moving from Illinois to Oregon at the age of, I think, 25. And it was a lot of groundwork working with the people in Oregon, the owners of the arena, whether or not they wanted a hockey team there, whether we'd be able to reach an agreement on a lease and, you know, office space and ice time and all those things. And then from there, having the funding to be able to do it. So a lot of conversations with banks, local banks, business planning. I mean, I guess I should take a step back. Business planning was the very first step. I had, you know, a 40-page business plan in my hand before I ever made a phone call to anybody with regards to trying to get the team going.
Let me interject real quick before you keep going with the story, because I run into so many business owners who don't have a business plan when they're starting out. What did you get a business degree in undergrad? What made you say, number one, I need a business plan, and then where'd you go to get the information you needed to put this together?
My undergrad was actually in Recreation Park and Tourism Administration, but there was a sports management element to that. Where the business planning came from, though, was I remember one of my senior year classes, we had to write a business plan, and that was kind of like our big project for the semester. And so that was where I learned how to do that and the importance of it. And honestly, to this day, I think it's the single most important thing is having a plan put together before you try a business startup, for sure. But then as you get going, is maintaining and updating that plan, reinventing that plan. And I sit down once a year. I just finished that last month, actually. But sit down once a year to business plan for the following year. So I think it's probably the single most important thing.
Now, when you're updating and you used reinvent, which I like is a great word for that, updating and reinventing your business plan, are you doing that on your own? Do you have somebody helping you? What's your process?
I guess over the course of time, it's changed. It's kind of reinvented itself. So I think early on I was probably immature in a lot of ways and felt like I had to do all that on my own. And as I've learned through the course of doing this for a while now, it is good to have some input. It's nice to involve other people in that if they're willing. So this year in particular, definitely utilized the help of some other people in the office to give me some ideas moving forward, to help me with some things that I might not see from my standpoint that they do see, things that might need to change, things that could get better. We even had a focus group in November to kind of talk about, we had 5 or 6 agents in the office that have been here for a while, and they talked about their vision for what they think the office is going to be 5 years from now, and what, things that they think would need to change to get there, and things that we do well. And that helped tremendously. This was really the first year that I've done that. It has been, previous years it has been me just sitting down and putting pen to paper. So this has been the best year for sure with that.
Excellent. So kind of a maturation process that you're going through, and you're testing it, you're seeing what's working, you're seeing what's not working, and how can you make it better.
Yep.
Do you ever feel when you're in that focus group like it's an attack on you personally, or are you able to push that aside and say, no, this is for the better good of the business, the company?
That's a good question. I think that might have been some of my trepidation with not doing it in the past is, do I want to hear these things? And am I going to be able to not feel like it's a personal attack? But I think that's another thing that comes along with time and maturity, is being able to listen to constructive criticism. And honestly, most people won't give it to you as an owner unless you ask for it. So for fear of repercussions that really don't exist. But it's I think important to know what do people think, and they're not going to tell you unless you ask. So I didn't feel like it was a personal attack at all. I think it was really constructive.
So you had some difficulties with the expansion team, right? You get it started, you get off the ground. What were some of the biggest hurdles you faced getting this thing off the ground so you had skates on the ice?
Yeah, it was huge. It was starting from scratch in a new place. First of all, moving my family to a new place. At the time it was just my wife and I, but a place where we'd never really spent any time. We were in Oregon, but we were in a new city. And so kind of uprooting, moving across the country to take on this new challenge, and then having to deal with all these things that were brand new to me, things that I hadn't had to do before. But you name it, from equipment to jersey design to, but that all came later. The laying the foundation really was in the challenges that existed there, where I was 25 years old. I was young. I had to get a lot of people to take me seriously before we were able to really think about doing this. And some of the ones that I remember are sitting across from lenders and giving them my business plan and telling them what I wanted to do and trying to get them to take me seriously. I sat down with 5 or 6 lenders before we finally found one that was willing to take a chance. And then from there, it was sitting down with a league commissioner and a board of directors for an existing league, and sitting across from them and telling them what my vision was and trying to get them to take me seriously. So lots of challenges in getting started. I'd say, just like any business, the biggest challenge was probably the financial side of things. And that remained to be the biggest challenge through the course of the 3 years that I owned the team. It's just pushing through those hurdles and being confident, believing in yourself, believing in what you set out to do, and pushing through.
What would you tell somebody else who at age 25 is trying to take on an elephant in a new business? What can you tell them to help them maybe avoid some of the hurdles you had to go through? If you were trying to tell yourself that today, what would that be, some of those things?
I guess it's just to be confident. If you have an idea or a vision that you believe in, don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it. Don't let anybody tell you that you're too young to take something on like this. And just perseverance. Keep pushing through even when things get difficult. You're gonna absolutely run into challenges along the way. I think doing as much research as possible prior to going into something, being as educated as you can, having a business plan, are all big factors in eventually being successful. But I think age is unimportant. It's just a number. As long as you're willing to learn along the way, I think you can grow to be successful in business regardless of your age.
Excellent. Sounds a lot like keeping an open mindset to me.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So that didn't go so well, right? In the end.
Ultimately, yeah. I mean, I went into it, and this is another thing. Do your research up front, because I think I always tell people that organization ran for 3 years on blood, sweat, and tears, and they were primarily my blood, sweat, and tears, and it certainly wasn't running on deep pockets. And so looking back, I can say that, and this would be advice as well for somebody who's going into a new business, is don't go into something underfunded. Drive alone is not enough to keep a business running. We were underfunded starting out, and we did overcome those hurdles early on, but as time goes on, it becomes more and more difficult to run an expensive company with being underfunded and having to be constantly worried about where the next check's coming from, how you're going to pay for the bus bill or the next ice bill that comes out. It made for a really difficult time in my life, professionally, personally. A lot of other people were depending on me to make things happen, and so a lot of stress that could have been avoided had the funding been in place prior to going into business. And it was just kind of naive of me to think that you run a business on passion alone. So be funded.
So what could you have done differently to have prevented or to have solved the underfunding problem? Looking back, of course, we're looking back so that, because I always like to say, if we aren't looking back to see what went wrong, to test things, then we're never going to get it right in the future if we face something similar. So what would be a different thing or things you could have done to have prevented the underfunding?
For one, overestimate. Make sure that you have ample room for error in your business planning when it comes to financials. Make sure that whatever you think you're going to spend at least 20% more than that. So I think that's important. But I think if I could go back in time, and this is something that I do now regularly in my current business, but if I could go back in time, I would have called other owners in the league, and I would have said, would you be willing to share certain pieces of your financial picture with me as a new owner, or would you be willing to answer some questions that have to do with financial? I thought that kind of stuff was off limits, and I didn't ask those questions, so I was going into something brand new with just basically assumptions on what I thought things might cost or what I thought might come up. And there probably were owners in the league that would have been willing to share with me. I think that is huge. Seeking the advice of other professionals that are doing what you want to do.
Excellent. I love that. Two great things. Number one, I tell every new business owner, when you put that business plan together and you're looking at your expenses, always overestimate your expenses. Yeah. I love the 20% rule. Make sure you have wiggle room, because if you don't have wiggle room, you get on razor thin edge and you can go under pretty quickly, right?
Yep.
And it's not just in that world. The second part of asking people in your industry for help, we all do that. We're all afraid. It doesn't matter, right? If it's hockey, if it's realtor world, if it's the attorney world. I have attorneys all the time that are starting up a law office, and I say, look, if you have questions, just give me a call. This isn't a competition.
Yep.
Right? And it amazes me how few of them ever do.
Yeah.
Put the ego aside and be smart enough to ask the people who've been through it.
Yep.
Save yourself the headache, right?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Love it. So did you sell the hockey franchise, or did you just have to bury it?
I always look at this as a success in the end, because although in some regards it was a failure in that I'm not still there, I'm not still doing that right now, which is ultimately what I thought I'd be doing for the rest of my life. It was my dream. I achieved it at a young age, and I thought it was something that I'd be doing, for the foreseeable future. So in that regard, maybe it was a failure, but I look at the entire thing as more of a success than anything, because I did sell the team ultimately, and for a loss, and it was devastating in a lot of ways, but looking now that I'm kind of over all that several years later, I look back and see that we laid the foundation for what is now a really, really successful team in a lot of ways. The organization still exists. I don't think it would exist right now if it weren't for the foundation that we laid in getting it started. But some really great guys came in and took it over, and it's doing great. And I look at that as part of the success in my life and in my business ventures is how well the team's doing now. I think the most important thing is knowing when to cut your losses. Because when you're fully invested emotionally, financially in something, it's hard to let it go. And extremely difficult to let it go. And you can't sometimes see past what am I going to be doing in the future? Am I going to be as happy as I was? And this was my dream. How am I going to let this go? What am I going to do after this? But being able to see past that and know when to cut your losses, because I'll say I probably pushed too hard and held on too long, and in the end that made things more difficult, more stressful. And I know a lot of business owners who have had to close or sell businesses have held on too long, past the point where they might have been able to get out of something more equitably. So I think that's important.
Oftentimes, our greatest successes come from our failures, and our greatest learning lessons come from our failures. They're what define us and help us go, that's not me. I'm going to now do this better,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that clearly then propelled you into the next step of life, right? And gave you those learning lessons. And that next step of life was with the Bighorns in Helena, right? What sucked you over to Helena?
I had a few different opportunities. Upon selling my team, I wanted to stay. I was still pretty adamant about staying in the industry that I set out to be in. And I had a few different opportunities to do that, and they were all in new places. That's part of being in the sports industry. You've got to be kind of willing to move around the country at a moment's notice. And but I think Helena drew me in just because I'd always kind of had the idea that living in Montana would be cool. I knew a lot about the organization. They were in the same league as we were. They were the most successful team in our league. They were well funded. There were a lot of things that drew me towards the organization and towards Montana in general. So ultimately, we decided to take the plunge and to be totally honest, use some of the last financial resources we had to move to Helena to take on this venture. So it was a little scary.
Okay, so you come on to the Bighorns as GM. What were some of the first challenges you faced right out the window?
Just being in a new place. I'll say the biggest challenge was going from owning a team and making all those calls, calling all those shots, to now being in an employee type position again, in the same capacity, at the same level that I was operating in before, but now working for somebody else. That was probably the biggest challenge. And then trying to get people who already had a way of doing things in Helena to buy into some of my ideas that worked in Oregon. And that was tough. The staff in Helena, they had no idea who I was. They were set in their ways. They didn't want to necessarily change the way that they did things, and it was a really difficult task to try to get people to buy into a new system, new ideas.
So for those of us as managers, as business owners, I'm starting to get a sense of some key takeaways, some key nuggets here. When you come in as a new manager, new owner, what are some of the things you did to get over those hurdles you just gave us to get people to buy in?
I think one-on-one conversations with everybody is super important, so that people understand who you are, where you're coming from, making sure that you're on the same level, and not talking down to people in those situations, just having conversations. And then getting to know people, building rapport one-on-one, but then bringing that into staff meetings and having a meeting with everybody in the same room, and then that's where you kind of lay the foundation for here's what we're going to be doing, here's what we're going to try and do differently, here's the changes we're going to make. I think those are all important things. Stepping into a new situation that's an existing, that was different for me. I'm used to starting up my own thing, and so that was probably the biggest challenge, was stepping into something that's been there for years and been successful already. That was probably the most difficult part.
So somewhere in the middle there, you meet our buddy Brad Oldhouse from Social Flicks, and I hear there's a slightly funny story about this.
Brad, I had the pleasure of meeting prior to that. Brad was the very first head coach of our hockey team in Oregon. So through some crazy turn of events for him and for us, we had hired a head coach already, and he couldn't get his visa to come down from Canada. Brad was in Canada working as a head coach in a different league, and had some things happen there that were unforeseen. And next thing you know, 3 weeks before the season starts, in our inaugural season, we have no head coach. So Brad and I were able to connect and brought him to to the Rogue Valley in Oregon, and so met Brad there and worked with him for a couple of years, and then our paths crossed again when I came to Montana. He's a Montana native, so our paths crossed again when I came to Helena, and we worked together again with the Bighorns, so it's pretty cool.
Oh, fantastic. So,
We'll be cutting that.
why? I thought that was great.
That was good.
So, okay, so you're in Helena, something's changing in the Bighorns for you, and you make a shift to real estate.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of your parting learning lessons leaving the Bighorns, and tell us about also who influenced you, what gave you that push to get into the real estate world?
Mm-hmm. So I talked earlier about knowing when to cut your losses in business. I think it's important to kind of know when to move on as well from something that might not be working out for you or for your family. I think my wife had maybe grown a little tired of moving around for these sports jobs, and I was too. I think we reached a point in Helena when I kind of came to the end of my relationship with the Bighorns where I knew that I was gonna probably try and do something different. And my grandfather actually had a long career in real estate, both as a broker and as an investor, and was very successful and a big influence in my life, and had always pushed me towards that real estate industry. So I had an interest in it, and it was, at the time, it was kind of the only other thing I could see myself doing besides the hockey thing. So I decided to get my real estate license in a town where I had just moved to, had very few connections. Decided to go ahead and get licensed, and the rest is kind of history.
So you're in a community that you really don't know much about. You've been there for about a year, right? You're starting up a new business, because starting out as a realtor, you're an independent contractor, so you are a business person.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go build a business and do it quickly in that world?
It's difficult. It's difficult because real estate is a industry where you want to have a sphere of influence. You want to have a lot of people who know you and who think of you as that top of mind person who, if I have a real estate transaction, I'm going to call this person. And as is true in many small towns in Montana, everybody already knows each other. So it's getting into those circles and becoming a part of the community, and not being a recluse. Spending your weekends and evenings out meeting new people, joining groups, being a part of professional networking groups, and learning as much as you can about the community, about the market. I think those are all important factors. And I had the good fortune of being involved with Windermere early on, and the philosophy there with the company is to build relationships first, and the byproduct of that is a successful long-term business. And I bought into that, and had good mentorship from the person in Helena who was my broker at the time. And he helped me kind of took me under his wing and helped me get a taste of some transactions and things like that, which I think is important. And was able to really just do that, to create relationships with people and become a part of some of those inner circles. And next thing you know, it really did. It led to business and being successful in the business.
So, of all that you gave me right there, and that's a big chunk to swallow, what's probably the most important takeaway? If you were to take a young realtor and you were to say, you need to do this first, mm-hmm. and here's how you go do it, what would that be?
In real estate, I would say educate yourself, because you might have 20 clients to work with, but if you don't know what you're doing, you can't do a good job for those people. So I think I would say educate yourself is the first and foremost. Beyond that, I would say it's building relationships, becoming part of the community, knowing your market, I just answered your question with five answers. You asked for one, but I think honestly, it's building rapport and trust with people. They want to work with somebody that they can trust. So that's a lot of your time. It's really a lot of your time is spent building those relationships and becoming ingrained in the things that people in that particular community do on a regular basis, and spending the time to do those things.
So people trust the expert and they trust somebody they know, right?
So be both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely be
See, you
both.
could answer that question for me.
It's nobody cares what my answer is. Oh, this is some great stuff. Okay, so now you're at Windermere and Helena. Now something changes and you start exploring new business opportunities there.
Just kind of having that entrepreneurial spirit. I got into real estate kind of with the notion that eventually I'd want to move into a brokerage ownership role, and use the experience that I had with the hockey team to use the things that I'd learned that didn't work, the things that I learned that did work, and give that entrepreneurial spirit another chance at business. And so that was my mindset when I got into the business, and I spent a lot of time learning as much as I could. During the course of the time that I was selling real estate, I was also a student of real estate and wanting to get my broker's license and start teaching others. And I did start a team in Helena. Prior to coming to Bozeman, I had a real estate team where I was responsible for training and supervising 4 other agents, and that was really kind of the catalyst for then wanting to move into a brokerage ownership role.
Tell us about that process then of transitioning from being an agent into the brokerage owner role, and what led you to get to where you're at today in Bozeman.
Just like any business, there's so much more to it than you'd expect, and there are a lot of agents who desire to be in an ownership role, and I will say it takes a certain kind of person to be able to transition from being an agent to being a brokerage owner, because being an agent is it's kind of a one-man show for the most part. You're really focused on your business, on your education, your needs, your goals. Whereas I think to be a successful brokerage owner, you really have to be able to be focused on the professional development of others and their success. And it's hard to kind of remove yourself quickly from one to the other. So that's that's part of the challenge of moving from being an agent to being an owner. But
let me interject real quick, because this was great. I just saw a video from Simon Sinek, who he said the difference between a great manager and a bad manager. A bad manager's focused on the customer. A good manager knows that their focus should be on their team.
Yeah.
Because the team takes care of the customer, the manager takes care of the team.
And I think there's a quote that I like. I think it's Richard Branson's quote, is that take great care of your employees and they'll take great care of your business or your company. And I think that's super important. So it is really here, it is all about the people. I invest the vast majority of my time and energy, I invest back into the people. The agents here who I think my main goal is for them to achieve their goals. And I think that's super important. They all know that when they're an agent here, they know that that's the goal of the brokerage.
Okay, so what was some jumping off points or some key hurdles that you had getting from Helena to Bozeman in Windermere?
Good question. I initially went into it as I was living in Helena still and commuting to Bozeman. And just to kind of go back, I had probably only been to Bozeman, you could count on one hand how many times I'd been to Bozeman. I was not familiar with the community. I certainly did my research on the market in the community, but as far as I didn't know anybody here. I didn't have any connections here, no relationships here. So for the first 4 or 5 months I was commuting from Helena, which made things difficult. I'd have to schedule as many meetings as I could throughout the course of the day so that I could drive back to Helena and get some sleep before I woke up and did it again. So the commuting in the beginning was a challenge, but the biggest hurdle really in the first year and maybe even beyond that was getting to know the agents that I wanted to come over. I was very targeted in my approach to bringing on agents, and really getting sit-downs with those people, getting them to sit down with me and hear my vision, talk about this new real estate office that's opening, talk about this new company, and getting them to buy into the idea of potentially coming over. And that first year I was having to meet with people 5, 6, 7 times to build that rapport and build that trust before they would even consider coming over to our office. So, and in this business you need agents selling real estate in order to stay afloat, in order to make money. So it was very important to get those people on board as quickly as possible. But you know, like I said, in this industry people know each other and nobody knew who I was. So it was a challenge in getting people to listen to what I was saying and really put any weight into my vision. So that was very difficult.
And you told me that when you first started doing this, right? You're coming over a couple days a week. Mm-hmm. You're staying on people's couches, yep. Right? Life was not easy starting out.
Mm-hmm. It was difficult. Yeah, I remember doing a lot of couch surfing. I had the good fortune of having a lot of friends that I met early on in coming down here that were willing to let me crash on the couch. And yeah, like I said, 5, 6, 7 meetings a day with new people, and it wears on you. So ultimately we moved down here, which was what needed to happen in order for this to be successful, and that's when things really started to change, was when I was based here.
What about your wife? This whole time you're going through this transition, what is she thinking? What's...
You know, kind of going back, before we decided on Bozeman, really what we did was we looked at where are the places in Montana, if I'm going to open a Windermere office, where are the places that A, we would like to live, and then B, that could benefit from a Windermere office in that location. So Bozeman was kind of the target from day one. We both had researched Bozeman enough to know that it would be a good place for us to live and raise a family. So she was on board. She was supportive. She's been supportive in pretty much all my crazy ideas. So
makes a huge difference when you communicate that, isn't it?
It makes a huge difference. Yeah.
I'm guessing you and your wife communicate quite a lot about what's going on in your business world, so you can stay on the same page.
Yeah, we've been married 16 years, so yeah, we definitely are pretty good at talking things out.
So you're here in Bozeman, you've got Windermere up and running here, you're the new kid on the block. Culture is clearly a major driving force for you. Tell us about that and tell us what your culture is.
Yeah, so when I decided to do this, I decided to build a business around a culture. And that kind of came from a lot of places, but it came from, I think one of the things we did really well in Oregon with the hockey team was we created a really good culture. We had a staff that started with us from day one, and that same staff was intact when we sold the business 3 years later. We had created an atmosphere where people felt like part of the family, part of the team. Everybody felt that way, from our volunteers to our staff, and that worked. So that was something that I realized early on was a success and was something to take away from that venture. So in starting this office here, it really was the primary focus was let's figure out what the culture is going to be, and then let's build an office and a team around that culture. And we've done that, and I honestly think that's been the single biggest part of any success that we've had.
So what is your culture?
Our culture is I set out to be different, and I don't mean this to be derogatory towards any other real estate firms, but kind of the traditional way of running an office is to have this situation where everybody flies the same flag, but they're all running their own business behind closed doors. You walk in, you have the secretary's desk, and then you have a bunch of people doing business behind closed doors. Those people aren't collaborating. The new people aren't getting to learn from the experienced people, and vice versa. So I kind of modeled it after a tech firm where people are working together out in the open. And we don't have closed doors in the office, so that kind of happens naturally. And that even in looking in office space in the beginning, we did so with the culture in mind. It was, what's the culture? Okay, we need to have an open, collaborative space then, which we do. So that was huge. And so we're very collaborative. We're different. I think it was really important to be different because we're coming into a market where there's already hundreds of real estate brokerages in this MLS. So we had to do something to stand out, to be different and be successful. And that was a big part of it, was our open concept, collaborative kind of nature here. The other things that I guess would be a big part of our culture are that we, like I said, we build relationships first. So we're a relationships-driven company. Everybody here buys into the idea that if you go out and you create relationships, genuine relationships with people, business will be a byproduct of that. And we have an office full of people, 24 people who all operate on that philosophy, and it works very well.
You've got a great little hockey stick behind you.
Yeah.
Tell us about the hockey stick.
The hockey stick is actually from the movie Happy Gilmore, which is one of my favorites, but I don't remember, it must have been my birthday or Christmas that the agents in the office at the time surprised me with that, but it actually says, it's got our core values engraved in it, which is relationships, community, collaboration, and professionalism. And then on the other side it says best boss ever. So I take pride in both, I suppose. But yeah, I think it's something that people, the reason the core values are on the stick is because it's something that people here know that I'm passionate about, and I think that they're all passionate about it in turn.
That's fantastic. So something else you brought up about culture is the fun atmosphere that you're building here.
Yeah.
Now you've got a little office space poster in the background.
Yeah, so everybody who works here knows that I'm a big fan of The Office, and that actually was a gift from one of my agents who went and found an autographed version of that poster. So I was pretty excited about that. But I really do. I think it's important to have some lightheartedness in an office setting, and to be able to be yourself. And I think I have a good sense of humor, and I don't think there's any reason to leave that at home. I think people enjoy being able to come to the office and have fun with each other. We do that here. Our Tuesday morning meetings are a lot of times us sitting around and laughing for 10 minutes before we start the meeting. And I'll inject humor into the meeting itself too. I think it goes a long way with people. I think the days of things having to be stiff and stale in office environments is kind of over. So I enjoy it. I'm glad I live in the era I do.
So what are some of the things you do to keep it lighthearted here?
Like I said, just being willing to be yourself. And anytime I'm talking or addressing the group, they know that there's probably going to be some joke or some form of humor that's thrown into it, and they just expect that of me. But everybody here is just as good at flicking it back to each other too. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Earlier we talked about some morning routine questions and some books, podcasts, any other advices you can give out. Why don't you tell us about some of those?
Yeah.
About you.
Sure. So I started that by saying that a lot of other owners in my within my network here at Windermere are very driven by the whole idea of a morning routine, and I know that a lot of professionals, successful business owners have a morning routine. I have tried and tried and tried to emulate them and to have some type of a morning routine, and I'm just not a routine person. So although I buy into the idea, I tend to not be able to stick to it. So for me, it's more just making sure that I'm learning all the time, willing to take time out of my day, whatever it works best for me, to spend some time on, professional development, motivational type stuff. And where I find the best time for me to do that is on the treadmill, because it's, as a former hockey player, the only thing I have fun doing, exercising, is playing hockey. And I absolutely hate walking on the treadmill. So I think the best time for me to do some professional development is while I'm bored on the treadmill. So I listen to a lot of TED Talks while I'm working out. And then the other thing is I have about a 20-minute commute into work. And I think that 20-minute commute is a great time to, catch up on some phone calls if you have some windshield time, but B, if you don't, to listen to a business podcast or a motivational podcast or something in your car, maybe download an ebook. And I could listen to an ebook in my vehicle in about a week in my 20-minute commute to and from home. So I don't do it as often as I'd like, but like I said, I'm not a routine person, so I do think that stuff is super important.
That's fantastic. So marketplaces are always shifting, right? Mm-hmm. What is something that's new and unique that you're bringing to the real estate market that's, whether it's disruptive or you're shifting something? What is it? Is it all about culture? Is there something else you're bringing? And also then to spin that, what is something that's going to be disruptive in your marketplace? Mm-hmm. Not that you're creating, but you see coming your way. Maybe it's artificial intelligence, whatever that could be.
Yeah. I think there's two ways to be disruptive in our industry. One is to be disruptive to the way things are done as a business. So being disruptive in the way that you recruit agents and things like that on that side of things, and then being disruptive in the marketplace. I think for us, the things that we do differently that set us apart as far as the agents are concerned is definitely number one is our culture. Number two is our tools, and that comes from our company, from the corporate side of things, and it's a big part of the reason why I decided to be a part of a franchise. I think we have the best tools in the business. I think that a lot of people would agree with us on that. So it's very easy for us to showcase that to agents when we're recruiting. And the third thing, which I really think does set us apart from a lot of other brokerages in town, is that my main goal is not to sell real estate. I'm not out there selling real estate. I'm not competing with my agents. My main goal is, like I said, their success, their professional development, getting them to the point in their career that they want to be. And we spend a lot of time on that. We help our agents with goal setting. We help our agents with business planning. And we don't just do it once a year. We sit down with them on a regular basis. I think I mentioned before, probably 75% of my time is spent investing my time back into the people who are here. As far as the marketplace is concerned, I think our company does a really good job marketing, and I think that relationships are a big part of this business. People want to work with somebody who they can trust, who they feel comfortable with. I think we do a really good job on that level. But ultimately, I think as far as the marketplace goes, we're a pretty traditional company in the way that we do business. And we're to answer your other question about what I see coming, there's always somebody out there innovating and trying to change an industry, and real estate, I think, is at the forefront of that right now. There are a lot of disruptors who are doing things vastly different from what we're used to, and there's a lot of that has to do with technology. And we have some companies that are emerging that are pretty well funded that are trying to do the whole transaction online without ever having to meet with somebody. And there's people out there who think that can work, and there's people who certainly don't. So I'm curious and interested to see what that leads to, but I'm not sitting here worrying about it. I think if we keep doing what we're doing and be willing to adjust along the way and reinvent ourselves as the market changes, then I think we're going to be just fine. The main thing is really perseverance, I guess. If you have an idea that you think is worth putting the time and effort into, then believe in that and invest in it wholeheartedly and don't give up, because there's absolutely going to be challenges along the way, and learn from your mistakes. I think that is super important. There's a quote that I like that I hear all the time that's failure plus time equals wisdom. And I think that's super important, to constantly be using your mistakes or your failures as a learning experience. And for those people who have maybe been in business a little bit longer, it's just finding ways to reinvent yourself, reinvent your business over time. Don't let things get stale, but keep that culture that you created intact. And I think that that's really important. For me personally, I do tend to get bored or start to think about the next big thing, and find myself remembering that this is the next big thing. And so I think just being able to stay the course and believe in what you set out to do, but being willing to adapt along the way, for those people who have maybe been in the business for a little bit of time.
So Kevin, that's great info about perseverance. Don't let people dictate to you. Keep driving forward, right? You're you. Mm-hmm. What other little nuggets do you have for us on business startups and keeping moving forward?
Just that if you're passionate about an idea, you're passionate about something that you want to chase after, a dream, a goal, not to let other people tell you that it can't be done. Because in my personal story, I've had that happen a number of times. First off, being 25 years old and having everybody, my friends, my family, other people tell me that trying to start an expansion hockey team and be a team owner at my age was impossible. And I just never really bought into, subscribe to the idea that anything was impossible. So, push forward through that stuff. When I moved to Helena and decided to get my real estate license in a place where I didn't know anybody, and everybody already had a realtor. Everybody in Helena already knows a realtor. And that was the stuff I was hearing. And I just kind of, you take it with a grain of salt, but if you believe in yourself, then go forward with it. And again, when we decided to move to Bozeman and open an office where it's already very competitive market, there's already a number of real estate firms. A lot of people didn't think we really needed another one. I heard there were a lot of naysayers. There were a lot of people telling me it was the wrong direction to go. And I just think if you can set all that stuff aside and just push through and chase your goals, chase your dreams, be a dreamer, be a big dreamer, and go for it. I think that's one of the big takeaways I would try to offer.
I love that stuff, because that is just spot on for so many businesses. Is the founders really push beyond what other people's limitations are when they say, no, you can't do that, or no, don't do that.
Yeah.
It's your vision, take your vision, lay it out, put the business plan together, and make it happen.
Perfect.
That's fantastic. So now I got to ask you, because I'm a big study of economy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always curious, where is the economy going? Bozeman is one of the hottest economies in the state of Montana, mm-hmm. if not the hottest.
Yeah.
What's going on now? We're starting to see some softness in the real estate market. Mm-hmm. At least that's what we're getting in the news.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
My take on Bozeman in particular is, if you would have, in 2010, you probably, instead of saying Bozeman was one of the hottest real estate markets, you would have said it's one of the most volatile real estate markets. And that has been the case over the course of the last couple of decades, as Bozeman's been pretty volatile. I'll say that we certainly have a lot of people moving to Bozeman. We've got the biggest growth in the state. There's people bringing a lot of money into Bozeman. There's a lot of cash deals in Bozeman that I didn't necessarily see taking place in Helena. And I think where we're at right now is, I think, and this is me personally, there are a million different schools of thought, but just based on what I see locally, I think what we saw was a market correction. And if you look at the prices in Bozeman and how they've risen compared to other markets in Montana, it's been very fast. It's been on an upward swing for a few years now, and it's been on a fast upward swing. And I don't think there's anything to worry about. I think we needed a market correction, and I think you're going to start to see prices level off in Bozeman, which I think is a good thing for everybody, because we're reaching a point where the wages don't necessarily match up to the minimum home price for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. So I think as long as we continue to have good growth and people wanting to move here, which doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon, I think this will continue to be a good market for a long time.
Fantastic. Appreciate your time today, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great.
Yeah, this was fantastic. Again, everybody, this is Joel Silverman from Silverman Law Office putting together the Montana Business Vlog for you, where we connect people, business people across the state of Montana. And please, Kevin Schwartz, come see him here at Windermere Realty in Bozeman. This was a fantastic sit-down session with you, interview. I appreciate your time, and I'm sure everybody else is going to get as much, if not more, than I did out of this. This was fantastic, Kevin. Thank you again.
Thank you.